In this video, we're going to be studying the blood vessels. We're going to be studying the arteries and veins. The artery, we have to identify the lumen, which is the space, or what should be the blood. Then we have the tunica interna, and we have the tunica interna, which is the internal or most inner layer. And we have there in the tunica interna, we have the endothelium. Then we have the tunica media, which is primarily smooth muscle. And we have between the tunica interna and the tunica media, we have the internal elastic membrane. Then we have the tunica externa, which is made of connective tissue. And regarding the vein, we have the same three layers, but we're gonna be working with the differences between these two kind of vessels. The walls of arteries and veins are composed by three different layers. Again, the tunica interna, the tunica media, and the tunica externa. However, it is relatively easy to distinguish between the two types of vessels. When we see a cross section like this one, we can see here the artery and we can see here the vein. Arteries are essentially round and have the thick tunica media, which is the muscle part, and veins have much thinner tunica media, and usually they appear flattened or collapsed. The endothelium, which is in the arteries, it's highly folded. This provides slack, so when the arteries dilates, and the endothelium is able to stretch by unfolding and thus becoming smooth. Veins, they can change the diameter and they are very little. They have much less smooth muscle here in the media, in the tunica media. Their endothelium, it usually appears smooth like this one. And veins, they have valves, and the arteries, they don't have valves. You should be able to identify the space. Here we can have some red blood cells here, the lumen, the space here. Then you have the tunica interna or tunica intima as well. Is the innermost layer, consists of the endothelium and then the base membrane and the internal elastic membrane or elastic interna. And it's the endothelium is the simple squamous epithelium. This is important for your knowledge. Why? Because it's a way to interchange gases in the case of the capillaries. And the endothelium, again, it's simply squamous. Simply squamous is lining the space, lining the lumen. Then we have the basement membrane, which is a thin layer of connective tissue, and the internal elastic membrane, and which is made of fibers, and it's binding the tunica interna to the tunica media with the muscle. Remember, it's folded and it's able to stretch when you have to contract or vasodilate your artery. Then we have the tunica media, which is made of muscle. It's a middle layer, and it consists of smooth muscle layer and external elastic membrane. These muscles able to contract to narrow the diameter of the lumen, which is called vasoconstriction, or it could be relaxing to enlarge the diameter of the lumen, which is called vasodilation. And finally, we have the tunica externa or tunica adventitia, which is made of is the outermost layer, and it's made of fibrous connective tissue, and it's anchoring and supporting the blood vessels with the tissue. Here we have the vein. Again, we have the space, which is going to be occupied by red blood cells. This is the lumen, the space, the inner space. Then you have the tunica interna. It's smooth, not folded like this one. Then you have the tunica media. It's thinner than this one. And then you have the tunic externa. It's made of connective tissue. Usually you have your veins, they are flattened or collapsed, like this one. Here you can see an artery in detail. You have the tunica interna, and you can see here the epithelium and the lamina interna, which is the elastic lamina here. Then you have the tunica media, which is the thickest one, and you have the tunic externa or adventitia. Remember, this is usually the shape is going to be circular or rounded, and you have the epithelial tissue or the tunic interna usually folded, and this is the space where you're going to find red blood cells for the arteries. You can see in this slide another couple of blood vessels. This one flattened and thinner and smooth. It's the vein. This one is the artery. You can see here again the folded epithelial tissue with the lamina interna as well, the thicker tunica media, and the outer tunic externa for support and anchorage to the tissue. Finally, you can see here a simple layer blood vessel. This simple layer, it's a capillary. Capillaries are the smaller blood vessel. Their walls consist of a single layer of endothelial cells, and they have the function of interchanging gases, oxygen and CO2. These endothelial cells are wrapped around to join to itself. These permit a single red blood cell to pass through them, but only for the forming itself, the red blood cell. The capillary endothelial cells vary in structure depending upon the tissue type in which they are found. Continuous capillaries, they are most common, for example, in the muscle and fat or nervous tissue. They have no transcellular perforations, and the cells are joined by a thin non-permeable junction. Some other organs, they have fenestrated capillaries. They have intercellular perforations in order to leave the red blood cells, such as endocrine glands, intestinal villi, and kidney glomeruli. They have fenestration. They have holes between cells.